Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to my channel. Let's dive in because today I want to challenge the way you think about compensation in your job search. And so let's dive in. I've got my tea here that's almost ready. Um, I want to talk to you from the lens of not just a lead recruiter with 15 plus years of experience, but also a job seeker. So I've been on both sides. I will say that I am team pay transparency all day. Okay. I remember being in a role, and as we were seeing certain states lean into pay transparency laws, I was like getting more and more excited. And I'm like, yo, why don't we just pull the trigger and, like actually disclose hiring ranges on all of our job postings. And so let me first say this. Um, and maybe not technically first, since I already said what I said, but second, say this. In terms of hiring ranges and salary ranges technically are not always the same. Yeah. So a position can have a salary range here to here, and then a hiring range of here to here, right? Typically, and what I've seen as someone with experience across several organizations in an HR capacity, across multiple industries in an HR capacity, is the hiring range will typically, not always, go up to the midpoint of the salary range. Um, there have been organizations that I work for that will hire someone up to the top of the salary range. The problem with that is that, well, there are a couple of problems with that. But one issue I will say is that when it's time for a promotion, this individual, or when it's time for a pay increase, not promotion. Hello, somebody. When it's time for, let's claim promotions this coming year. When it's time for a pay increase, they're already at the top of the range. And so they can't really, for the sake of this one person, adjust the range. Um, and so that person has, in this past experience, has had to forego salary increases because they came in at the top of the range. So that's one thing I've seen. The other thing I know that has been a huge topic of discussion around hiring team tables, and of course, that includes our compensation teams, is that there are other people on that team who maybe have been with the organization longer and may not be earning at the top of the salary range yet. And so you start thinking about bringing someone in from the outside at the top of the range. And I have all sorts of responses to that particular issue. I won't get into all that today. I typically reserve that for compensation and HR, but I don't love it. Let's just leave it at that. I don't love it. So I want to just lead with that, right? Hiring range, salary range, typically not always. And I think knowing that difference might help when it comes to negotiation conversations. I really, and I'm going to try not to repeat this too many times, but I feel it so strongly. I really wish more organizations were transparent about at least their hiring ranges on job descriptions. It saves everyone an awful lot of time. It really does. Like organizations know, for the most part, how much they're willing to pay an individual. And I say for the most part because I've worked for some that are like, oh, what's the market, Christina? And then I pull that and they're like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, guess it kind of depends. And I'm like, why do we have this gray area? But uh, hiring range, salary range, right? So just knowing that distinction. And for some organizations, there's overlap where the hiring range, listen, they'll hire you at the top of the salary range. Just know that there may be some issues for you going forward if you come in at the top of the salary range. Okay. Um, Another thing I'll point out when it comes to compensation is that some of you, I need I need more of you to become comfortable negotiating compensation instead of receiving an offer and being like, "Yep, I'll take it." Even if you were like, "No, Christina, I needed the job. I was afraid to negotiate." So that's part of when I'm working with clients, more so on a VIP intensive level, and I'll put the link down below in the description for that information. But we get into the nitty-gritty so that when it's time for you to even go to your first interview, I need you to be super confident, and I need that confidence to continue throughout the interview process. And by the time you get to that offer stage, my goodness, there is no, I was afraid to ask for more. Like, what is that? You know that this organization wants you, right? You know that you've made a significant impression. You know that there were likely, especially in this market, other candidates they were considering, likely seriously considering. And so that alone should be a confidence booster. The other thing I want you to start doing is doing your research, right? If for whatever reason the compensation wasn't disclosed on the front end in that job description, or if the compensation range wasn't discussed during the interview process or the pre-screening process with the recruiter, I need you to really do your research. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say this before your first conversation with that recruiter or hiring team, whatever comes first. I need you to know that you have an idea in mind of what that position goes for. If it's not disclosed on the front end, you will walk into that initial conversation knowing this is the standard range for the industry, for the state, for the whatever it is. And this is where I would like to fall within that range. So it may be you want to come in at the midpoint. You may say, listen, I need to be at the top of the range. Do your research so you understand what other organizations are paying. What are their competitors paying, right? Their competitors may align with pay transparency laws. And so go to those postings and see what they disclosed as the compensation range. I hope I'm so I'm kind of like I hope I'm making sense. I hope I'm making sense. The point is, do your research before the first conversation. The point is, tell yourself that, you know what, they want me. So when you move through the process, you are just consistently building confidence. So by the time you get to that negotiation stage, you are actually going to negotiate. And I don't want you to overthink the negotiation piece. It can be as simple as, is this up for negotiation when the offer is extended? It's going to be a yes or no. And then it can be, okay, let me take some time to review the details of the offer, the benefits, so forth and so on. Please don't jump, especially, and just so you know, I work with mid-career professionals. We're not going to just jump and accept an offer because it was extended. Uh-uh. You want to take some time to think about it, at least 48 hours to review the details and then get back to the recruiter that you're working with. You know what I mean? So, um, ask if it's up for negotiation, right? Also, and I've only had to do this a couple of times, a few times. Let's say a dozen or so times that I can think of off the top of my head in my career where I say, hey, this is our best and highest offer. And if we've, negotiated back and forth, this is our best and final offer. And at that point, don't even ask, right? We've already had the deeper conversations. Don't even ask. So if the recruiter doesn't say this is our best and highest or best and final offer, then it's up for negotiation. That's my thought, and that's my thought on both sides of the table. So even when I'm extending offers, sometimes I'm like, I wonder if they're going to negotiate. I wonder if they're going to ask for more. And far too often, and I'm going to say this, far too often, women, women will not ask for more. Um, yeah, and there's studies that support what I just said, right? Like one of the focuses um, for my writing in grad school was financial services, was compensation, was talent acquisition, was diversity, equity, inclusion. And the data suggests that women do not negotiate offers nearly as much as men do, not nearly as much. And so I want to encourage you to, and I'm going to say it again because it's super simple, is this negotiable? After 3 words, is this negotiable? And if it is, you don't have to come back with a number immediately, right? This should make it easy. You don't have to come back with a number immediately, even though ideally by the time you've gotten to this point, you've done your research. Take the 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever it is you need, and figure out what number you want to come back with. And again, if no one said this is our best and highest or best and final, then it's negotiable. Um, the other thing I'll say is that negotiating is really less about being bold and yeah, I'll just say being bold. It's less about that and more about um, framing and more about knowing what I shared earlier. So hiring range, right? Hiring range, salary range, and our first offer to you is likely not going to be the highest offer. It's business, right? It's just a business thing. So, yeah, it's not that you have to be bold and audacious. None of that. You just got to know there's more where that came from. How about that? That's how we're going to wrap this up. There is more where that came from. That is what I want to leave you with. Now, whether you choose to pursue that more by those 3 words, is this negotiable? That falls on you. Take a deep breath and know that there's a reason you are even getting an offer. They want you. Now what? And if this resonates, my hope is that you will like, you will subscribe, and you will share. I look forward to continuing to bring content like this to you. And until the next time we speak, have a fantastic rest of your day.